Mother Earth Medicine,
an ancestral intelligence podcast to heal our future. Greetings, my relatives and my people. This is Lyla June, and we're very lucky today to be joined by Burhan Sonmez. And our dear friend here is an amazing Kurdish author, and their people have been struggling for centuries, if not millennia, to maintain their ethnic identity, being split between Iraq, Turkey, and other places. And they're kind of smack dab in the middle of it all, which I think Native Americans and indigenous peoples can really relate to, because we are often also divided by borders that were not drawn by our people, but were drawn by colonial forces. And so I'm just going to run through his bio here real quick. He's the author of 6 novels. He's the president of PEN International and a senior member of Hughes Hall College and Trinity College at the University of Cambridge. His novels, which are often written in Kurdish language, as an effort to honor the language and revitalize this language, they've been translated into 48 languages and received international prizes, including the EBRD Literature Prize, the Václav Havel Center Award. And he was born in Turkey, and he grew up speaking Turkish and Kurdish. And he worked as a lawyer in Istanbul before going to Britain, living there in exile for several years. He has been on the judging panel of various events, including the Inge Feltrinelli Prize and the Geneva International Film Festival. And he's written for presses such as La Repubblica, Der Spiegel, and The Guardian. He has translated the poetry book of The Marriage of Heaven and Hell by William Blank into Turkish. And he has written 5 novels in Turkish. And he began to write in his mother tongue, Kurdish, with his last novel, The Lovers of Franz K. And his website is www.burhan, Burhan Sonmez, sonmez.com. We're so happy you're here, my dear friend, who I met in New York the other day at a literary festival, and we shared a cab together, which I'm sure was destined, magically destined to happen. So tell me a little bit, what is the connection between Kurdish people and their indigenous homeland? How long have you all been there?
Leila, thank you very much for this program, for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. Kurdish people has been in their homeland throughout the known history, maybe 10,000 years. We have always been there, at the heart of Middle East, with the older name known Mesopotamia. And later we got our own name, Kurdistan, the land of Kurds. And for thousands of years we've been living there, but in last couple of 100 years we've been suffering a pain maybe you can understand best. Our land has been stolen, and then our language and our culture, everything stolen and forbidden and tortured. And this is a great problem still going on. We can talk about the political and social background of this problem. But as a writer, as a man of letter, I mostly lately focus on the cultural and literary aspect of this issue. Now, Kurdistan for us is homeland, but it's imaginary. It is there, we live in that land, but this land taken by 4 different countries in the Middle East. We are not allowed to own our own country. So we imagine that we own our own country where we live in, and our language is being shaped around this. Mostly Kurdish is famous with lamenting, with requiem, with sad songs. And but I think for my generation and the generations coming after us, it's time to start to compose the songs of joy, hope, happiness for a bright future of our nation. Are we going to see that future? I hope yes. If not, at least we can say that we have done our best to be able to see that. This is where now we find ourselves.
Well, what I would say to that is that all countries are imagined. None of them are actually real. They are arbitrary borders. But what is real is your people's long-standing relationship to the land. And that's more real than any colonial border or any colonial culture country represented in the UN or whatever. And so I strongly recognize Kurdistan as a beautiful place and with beautiful people. Um, just from an indigenous perspective from Turtle Island, I'm curious, do Kurdish people have any land stewardship practices or plants or animals that are um, special to you, or any ethics of how to relate to the land that might be similar to indigenous cultures here where I'm from?
Kurdistan, known as a mountainous land, um, mountainous and forestry. Uh, in last 40 years, in the northern part of our homeland, has been going on a civil war between Kurdish militants and Turkish army. And when Turkish army fought Kurdish militants, they targeted certain things. They burned down 3,000 villages. Also, they especially targeted burning down forests. Just arbitrarily, they go in a valley or in a gorge or on a mountain. They just burn down the whole forest in that area. This is something um, done deliberately to destroy the habitat of Kurds. In the old way of wars, they would call it scorched land strategy. Maybe Native Americans know this very well. Everything was destroyed, that they couldn't survive anymore there because the habitat is changed. And the same thing now being practiced in this land. And in every decade, I can say they practice something new. For example, in last 6, 7 years, another thing happened in, we call it Rojava, Western Kurdistan, which is now legally part of Syria yet. There has been a civil war in last 15 years in Syria, and Kurdish part of Syria has been invaded by Turkish army 7 years ago. They displaced 300,000 Kurds from their homes, villages, and they brought other people, new settlers in Kurdish um lands. This is something that's been going on in last 5, 6 years, but you cannot read these kind of things in media at all because Turkish army is a member of NATO. Whatever they do is being legitimized through their partners like United States or United Kingdom and other countries. And what they are doing in this part of Kurdistan, Rojava, especially very interesting. Our main habitat is covered with olive oils. That region is famous with olive oils. They don't burn them now. They carry them. They take all these trees out and move them to somewhere else. I think they assume that they are not going stay in that land for a long time because they know that they stole that land from us recently. They are not sure about this future, and they say, let's steal all these olive trees. It's not about 10 or 100. We are talking about tens of thousands of trees. All machines now been working doing this. It's on media here in my region, but in other places, I've been traveling like you all around Europe or other countries, but in the press, I never see any news about the situation of Kurdish lands or habitats or nature. These things that being done deliberately and in the end achieving something, people are losing their natural environment. They feel that if there's no land, there's no home, there's no mountain, no river, no olive oil, what is the future for me? Then people start to go some other places instead of uh, dreaming going back home. Even they lose their dreams. They just go to diaspora. In Europe, we have now more than 3 million Kurdish people living in diaspora. Those people all came in last 2 or 3 decades.
It's such a it's such a strategy of colonization to rip away the relationships that those people have with the land. As you saw in Turtle Island, or what we call North America is Turtle Island, there was a deliberate campaign to destroy the bison. They nearly obliterated the bison because they knew that the health of the bison was directly correlated with the health of indigenous peoples. Um, and so they tried to cripple us by tearing down the bison. Same with my nation, the Diné people. We're shepherds and we've been shepherds forever. We have petroglyphs of sheep. People say they brought the sheep to us, but we've always had our sheep throughout the desert. And those sheep are still with us. Some of those genetics are still with us, but they came in with the Livestock Reduction Act. Um, and literally massacred thousands and thousands and thousands of our sheep, who to us are not just sheep. Those are our mothers. Those are our sisters. Those are our brothers. Those are our grandfathers. To us, the sheep are they're no different than our family blood relatives. So to see them, I can imagine seeing the olive trees, by the tens of thousands uprooted by these forces. I can imagine is a similar feeling of losing your family. Because to us, there's no distinction between human and non-human as relatives. And so, what was that region? How do you spell that region in Syria of Kurdistan?
We call it Rojava. Rojava means west in
Ah,
Kurdish. That means western homeland.
Rojava.
So yes, Rojava means west. And
Ah.
the part I live in is we call Bakur. It means north because Kurdish land after First World War was divided by 4 countries, and we got all these cardinal directions in our name, like from north, from south, from east, from west. These are the lands. So the north is in Turkey, south is in Iraq, and east in Iran, west in Syria today.
When I was a little girl, my father it was the Iraq War, or rather the Iraq invasion by the United States beginning, I think in 2003, it was, maybe 2002. In any case, my father said there's these people in Iraq called the Kurds. And he said they are an indigenous people and
Yes.
they're being deeply mistreated in Iraq. Can you share a little bit about the Kurdish experience in what we now call Iraq?
Yes. Now, all 4 parts are going through similar things. In Iraq lately, we've been a bit luckier because after that war, when Saddam fell, Kurds fought a lot in Iraq since 1950s. There's been so many massacres, even um, chemical bombs used against Kurds in 1990s by the authorities there. And now in Iraq, we managed for the first time to get a small land of autonomy. In that autonomy, we try to build up something. And what happened there, in my opinion, everything was related um, to oil. In the Middle East, it's the heart of all these oil wells. But where those oil wells are in those 4 countries, they are all in Kurdish lands. If now we have an independent Kurdistan, that means 4 countries will lose all oil. That means British companies, American oil companies will lose it. So to secure all these things, and about 100 years ago, they decided to give those lands to Turks and Arabs and Persians and leave Kurds with nothing. And after that came also the denial of all this culture and language.
Wow. And it reminds me so much of my people, the Diné, also known as Navajo, because we sit on a huge oil field and we also sit on huge coal deposits and also uranium. So I believe that we were placed there to protect those things. That our culture says we will never dig under the earth. Because in our language, Nahokadi and Dene means that's our word for human being, and it means earth surface sacred being. The sacred being who lives on the earth's surface, which means we're not allowed to go under the earth's surface. So we have always protected what was underneath the earth's surface in a sacred way. Um, and we knew it was not for us to go down there. The only ones who go down there is like the prairie dogs and the moles and the other burrowing animals. We don't go down there. Um, and so I believe that a lot of these minerals and these oils were put there for a reason. They have a place, they have a purpose where they are that may not make sense to us as human beings yet, but they're supposed to stay there, obviously, because when we took them out, look, we're almost destroying the entire planet with greenhouse gases. Um, and so and the water, anyways, I'm preaching to the choir here, but um, I feel like a lot of sacred places are protected by indigenous peoples, and those places are often targeted not only for financial reasons, but even for spiritual reasons, because the spiritual forces that hold that reverence and that respect for the land and for each other, those are the antidote to all these spiritual forces of hierarchy and slavery and domination. And anytime we hold that light strongly, we are a living antithesis to all those other structures that are just implicitly delegitimized just by us just standing there. We're not have to do anything. We're just standing there providing a contrast to these systems of hierarchy, and therefore we are a threat to those systems, and we're always targeted, we're always attacked. So it's feeling very familiar what you're saying. um, would you like to respond to that, or shall I ask one of my next
Yes,
questions?
yes, I think they are also doing this by degrading our identity. Like your people, on Hollywood movies, they're always being portrayed like uh, underdeveloped,
Primitive,
savage,
yeah.
primitive, uneducated. Same in my country. And in the official discourse that's in armies' handbooks written in Turkey and other Middle Eastern countries about Kurds, they call them people of mountain. That means they lived on top of mountains and they lost their connection with the civilization. They are savage, they are primitive. So we need to bring them education and culture, modernity. This is something being used in last 100 years. You know what happened about in 1980s when there was a military coup in Turkey. Pan International, my organization, sent two important writers to Turkey to to observe the situation of writers during military coup. And those writers were former Pan President Arthur Miller and also our English Pan Vice President Harold Pinter, who later received Nobel Prize. When they returned home from Turkey, Harold Pinter, because when he was there, he heard the story of Kurdish nation, he came to London and he wrote a wonderful play. The play is called Mountain Language. Mountain language means you cannot speak that language. If you speak in the household, that means you are primitive. You should deny it and you should never share it with the officials. This is something we all experience. I remember when I was little at home, when military would come to village, the elders always would call us kids because we were, let's say, we didn't know anything. They would say, "Hey, look, soldiers come in, never speak in Kurdish, okay?
Mm,
Try to answer them in Turkish." We
mm,
couldn't understand why,
mhm.
but because your language is being targeted. They say that your language is dirty. You should feel dirty and willingly and happily try to transform yourself into the, let's say, superior nation or culture. It's either Turkish or Arabic or Persian or something else. This is something going on for ages and still, especially in last couple of years now, being the center of problem again in Syria with the new regime changed. And it's a different story. I don't want to go that side, but still in this age, it's repeating itself.
You hold in your body these stories of the denigration of your language and your culture, and yet you have come out of that as an author of books in the Kurdish language to sort of say, hey, this is who I am. This is who we are. We are beautiful. What did it mean to you to publish your first book written firstly in the Kurdish language?
This was a real challenge after being a real dream for myself because I grew up in my small environment with my tribe. We still use the term tribe in my nation. In my tribe, we speak Kurdish. I grew up with them, and everyone in the household speak Kurdish, but we could never use it at school or in your business practices anywhere. And when I was 26 years old, Kurdish language finally, officially uh, said to be not forbidden anymore. But we don't know what it means, not being forbidden. Still, you cannot use it in education system or other places. And when I first time saw and read a novel written in Kurdish, I was in my mid-30s. Even though we speak Kurdish, we were not able to see any printed document. Maybe a few people, especially people who live abroad in Europe, in diaspora, because they had a free environment. They focused on cultural productions, publishing Kurdish magazines and books. But in the country, we didn't have that opportunity. When I went to Britain in exile in the beginning of 2000s, then there I saw the book in Kurdish. So that was a big question for me because you speak language, but you don't know the grammar because the letters are written in a different way. We use Latin alphabet, but you have to know the language through education in order to be able to read it and write it. So when I decided to write and to return my mother tongue, I was already writing and publishing in Turkish. I needed to educate myself in Kurdish grammar. And I said, okay, let's create an example for my people. If I am now an international writer and head of PEN International, I should show people that people like me can study, work on their grammar, on their language, and return to their mother tongue. So for a few years, I gathered Kurdish grammar books from friends. I studied, I worked, and then I managed to write my first Kurdish novel. Now I'm working on the second one. It's a great joy of happiness. With so many challenges maybe in that work, but it's a big dream because when I write it, I feel that I'm speaking with my late mom because that was the only language we could speak. So my mom is gone now, my language is gone, but all these memories are in our brain, in our heart, in our soul. How can we deny it? If we would like to carry it forward, to share it with the future generations, I think a book, a story, a written text is one of the best ways to bring it life.
You're listening to Mother Earth Medicine,
an ancestral intelligence podcast to heal our future.
This podcast is brought to you by Cultural Survival. We are an Indigenous-led organization that has been supporting Indigenous peoples in their self-determination, defense of their rights and territories, and continuance and revitalization of their lifeways, cultures, and languages for more than 50 years.
We invite you to visit our website, www.cs.org, and make a donation. Every donation counts, no matter the size. Your donation will go a long way to ensure that Indigenous voices across the planet are heard and actions are taken to protect their rights and territories, along with the future of Mother Earth.
Thank you for contributing to our work with Indigenous peoples around the globe. It's an investment in a flourishing future for all.
In Diné language, we have our own orthography as well, which is our own way of writing, our own accent marks, different, little symbols that mean different sounds. We never actually wrote our language prior to colonization. And it's not that we didn't know how. That's what they say, but we knew how to write stuff down. It's not hard to write stuff down. We chose not to because it was easier to lie through the written word. And we preferred to learn face to face and transmit things face to face. And we trusted that the Creator gave us this ability to speak to each other, that was enough. We didn't need to do more. So was Kurdish always written down in pre-colonial times, or is that a new thing where they had to invent grammar and orthography to be able to write it down?
Kurdish always been in written language because in the Middle East the main influence and alphabet was through religion of Islam, was Arabic language. So all Muslim nations used Arabic scripts and alphabet to express themselves. So Kurds use that scripts for over 1,000 years. But the problem is, especially in the last couple of 100 years, we couldn't find any means to distribute this way of communication. And people say that Kurdish language is a great source or treasure of oral language. Yes, we know that. We can proudly say we are a great language of oral tradition. Stories, songs, especially epic stories. For example, epic storytellers, we call them denbej. When they come to a village, they would tell you a story by singing, and a story usually would take about 3 or 4 nights, sometimes longer nights to complete. It's when you try to write it down, it's hundreds of pages. And through that culture of oral tradition, we managed to survive, to share our tradition with each other. And also, like your nation, when I say Kurds and Kurdish nation, actually, I should say that it's kind of a family of languages, Kurdish language. Mainly people say 4 plus some others. Many dialects within Kurdish, many accents. Even when we come, for example, when I meet a Kurdish person, we always say, what is your tribe, your region? And we understand our accents are different and the words we use are different. And after that, we try to share the same language with different, let's say, words, different definitions, adjectives. This is something we have been experiencing for long years. The oral language is there, the written language also over there, but it's been very ineffective until, let's say, last 10, 20 years now, the new generation, with the help of maybe all this internet, social media, especially the new generation, very much showing interest in written text. I think that's a good sign for people like me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it's amazing how Kurdish has been so adaptable. Because first it was more of the Arabic script that was sort of more common, and so you guys
Yes.
wrote your language in that. And now it's more the Latin script is more common, so you write your language in that. And I think that's very adaptable and wise to be able to um, leverage these tools of the Arabic script and the Latin script for your own purposes to communicate your own things. And at the same time having that really deep oral tradition. Um, I literally,
And also,
mm,
yeah,
no, no, go ahead.
and also, uh, in Mesopotamia or in the Middle East, we can, through our literature, show that how our language is different from others. For example, Kurdish language is an Indo-European language. Uh, it has nothing to do with uh, Arabic or Hebrew. It's close maybe a bit to Persian language. And you know what's the origin of our name? There are many theories. 5,000 years ago, exactly, when we descended from, they call it from east or from north, into Mesopotamia, we were living on the highlands, on top of mountains. And we were a bit savage in comparison with the Sumerian civilization, maybe. Sumerian people, in their language, a civilization disappeared about 3,000 years ago, but they established one of the biggest civilization of humanity. In Sumerian language, they call mountain Kur, Kur, and they called those people who live on top of mountains Kurd, Kurda. And our nation got that name,
Uh,
people of mountain.
wow.
We live on top of mountain. Then we started to descend into valleys, these open plains, but still in every part of Kurdistan, the mainland of Kurds always mountainous areas. We
Mm,
live there. Apart from my, let's say my tribe,
mhm.
we're a plain tribe, and but the majority, let's say 80%, are mountainous tribes still in Kurdistan.
I love this so much because as Diné people, we have our homeland is defined by four sacred mountains. Two of them are in Colorado, one is in New Mexico, one is in Arizona. It's um, Blanca Peak, Mount Taylor, San Francisco Peaks, and Hesperus Peak, which in Diné is Sisnajine and Debensa. So I'm just loving how we're like mirrors of each other across the world. And I'm loving how this podcast that is like sort of founded by Diné women is now reaching out around the world and seeing so much similarities and connections. Um, I have like a million questions for you, but I think we have time for at least maybe two. Um, uh, my first question is, what would you say is the greatest solution? Because we are technically a solutions oriented podcast, theoretically. What is the greatest solution that Indigenous peoples worldwide can do to lift up their cultures and help their children be proud of who they are and protect their languages? I mean, I know there's a lot of different answers, but what are some of the ones that you gravitate to and that you like to do and that you think about to protect our people, our cultures, our languages, and just generally, lift our people up?
The key question for everyone, we can easily say we should promote respect to cultures. and their self-determination. If we have land or a village or a city, if people live there, Kurds or Arabs or any nation, they should be able to govern themselves with their culture, which respect each other. Is that possible? Of course, possible. The only barrier, here is political greediness. And this big, let's say, imperialist policies in every region, because they would like to exploit lands, mountains, rivers, nations, and then you suddenly find yourself under the shadow of big armies, big warplanes. But against this, we have to say that a language is a living uh, humanity. It's like a forest, like a river. If you destroy a river, that means same. You are destroying a language, a small tribe or a big nation. And especially for nations or tribes like us, we should keep promoting our own culture, but also improving our relations with other people like us, because wounded people can understand each other better. I remember when I was at secondary school, we would watch uh, Western movies on TVs, the typical cowboys and Native Americans. Mostly people would like to be a cowboy, a victorious and good guy. But people like me, like Kurdish kids, would always prefer to be an Indian. I didn't know the reason at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we found them more beautiful,
Mm.
more natural, and more one of us.
And it's same, I think a lot of indigenous peoples here, we look across the oceans and we see ourselves in other people, um, and we see a common struggle. And one of the things that kind of came to mind as you were talking is that there seems to be this thing where over time, those really strong imperial forces, lose their power over our people, or rather, they finally decide they don't want to prohibit our languages, or they finally decide that we are human after all. Um, and so I wonder if one of the solutions too is to hold that fire strong through those periods of persecution, just like your family continued to speak in the home as long as you could until the sort of the ban was lifted, and you can come out again from hiding, basically, which is what we had to do too. Um, and we had to, you know, realize that we are allowed to be who we are. And in the 1960s, we had the American Indian movement in the 70s, and it was very successful to make us proud of who we are again, which I feel like you're doing that in your community now. You're kind of all coming out in this renaissance right now, and like not feeling prohibited to speak your language, and people around the world are seeing that it was a mistake to suppress you and a mistake to marginalize you, even though I know that marginalization of Kurdish people is ongoing. At least the international community is starting to say, like, okay, this isn't what we want. um but yeah, maybe one of the solutions for all of us as indigenous peoples is to simply keep our fires going and wait for the day when the world comes back to its senses and is able to celebrate us with us. And now when I go to Europe, it's so funny, right? Like they used to call us savages, primitive, stupid, terrible things, right? Even though we were arguably more civilized than they were. um, but anyways, depends how you define civilization. But now when I go to Europe, it's like they're rolling out the red carpet, like they're just like, oh my gosh, a native woman is
Yes,
here, and
yes.
they just want to hear what we have to say. And even in the United States, I get that, and we get that in some places. Other places, not so much, but many places they want to hear from us. So I think if we can survive those periods of persecution with dignity and love and nonviolence to the extent that we can, and come out the other end, we can come out so much stronger with so much more of a voice, to share with the world our messages, not only of who we are, but just how to be human in general.
Yes, yeah, yeah, that's very important, what you say. We know the long history of violence and oppression, but also we know that there is a history of resistance and surviving. And I think he was Anton Chekhov, Russian writer. He said once, maybe I didn't have great victories, but you should listen to great stories of my defeat that I managed to survive through. So we are expert of surviving. Maybe not winning wars, but we know how to survive throughout all these difficult periods. We should tell people not only victories win. Who resist the time, those people can win. Like we are winning now. You are in the States. Now I'm here and we talk and we share what our nation have been experienced. This is another way of resistance.
Yes, yes, it's amazing how you guys have survived Sumerian oppression, Ottoman oppression, Saddam Hussein oppression. I mean, and now the oppression. It's just it's impressive, and I wish you guys didn't have to go through this, of course. But it's like, as Native Americans, as it were, indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, we have only really gone through 500 years of oppression from Spanish forces, Portuguese forces, British forces, which has been hell. We almost
Yes.
killed all of us. Like 98% of us were wiped out in the United States. And even as terrible as it was, I can only imagine how, like, you guys have been doing this for like 6,000 years, but it's like one BS imperialist force after another. But it also kind of gives you this perspective of like, yeah, they come and go, like they don't
Yes.
last, but you guys do
Yes.
somehow.
Yes. Like you have been in that land for thousands of years. You are part of the land. We are not newcomer. Like, we are not newcomers. We've been here throughout history. So we have no other place to go.
Well, I have a sort of a nuanced question for you, and maybe this is our final or next to final question. So like, you are fluent in Turkish, you're fluent in Kurdish, your indigenous language, and you were raised in a world where Turkish language was framed as better, whatever, more superior. And you, as a Kurdish man, you mastered that language. You mastered Turkish. You mastered the language of the oppressors, you could say, and you spoke to the world in Turkish, and you are speaking to the world in Turkish. I am similar in the sense that my native tongue is Diné. The difference between you and me is I don't speak my native tongue fluently because of a lot of reasons, boarding schools and literally ripping it from my grandparents' mouth, and with washing their mouth out with soap, and beating them and punishing them. Um, but I'm learning my native language, and I know quite a bit based on just being self-taught and trying to get it back. Um, but I have mastered English, and I have gone to all the white man's universities. I've gone to Stanford. I've gone to my master's degree. I got my PhD, and I've mastered the colonizer's language, um, to some extent, sometimes at the expense of my own language, proficiency in my own language. I don't really know what my question is, but it's something like, what how do we house all of this inside us, where we are what is more important to you? Mastering the oppressor's language so that you can speak to the world and speak to them in their own language, or mastering your own language and giving that investment and energy, and or are they both important? And d- what is the relationship you have, or how do you reconcile that with having to have learned this language, but also having to come to respect your own?
Yes, that's very interesting and important point. When we look at nations and people like us, we see more or less a similar situation. And people, especially intellectual people of oppressed nation, often have to go through the language of oppressor. Look at the example of India. And British went there for 500 years. They colonized, they murdered, they stole everything. And when Gandhi came in the 20th century, he resisted. He was a master degree professional in English language. Or look at South Africa, Nelson Mandela, who fought again against British, let's say, uh, mentality there with a language. He mastered their language. He used it very well. Here we have two different levels. One is the world that we found ourselves. It's like Heidegger's philosophy says that the world is where human fallen into. We've fallen into this world. We cannot deny it. We can only aim to use it as good as possible for our nation. This is one part. The other part is when it comes to our own language, our own nation, this is the part not to use, to promote as well. The other part is just to use for the benefit of our cause, our struggle. But the undervalued, the oppressed languages, cultures should be especially promoted, should supported. They should be given extra power and let them survive.
That makes sense to me. So it's almost like we master the oppressor's language, not because we want to or need to, but simply so that we can overcome these systems of oppression so that we can then promote our own, and that we can then build up our own. So, in a roundabout way, mastering that language of the colony is a way of liberating our own. Um, I think just I would say to all Native listeners out there, or anyone really, because even people who identify as white people or Black people or Asian people in the United States or wherever, they have their own indigenous languages too, such as Irish or Polish or what have you. Um, uh, and so that I would encourage everyone here to never forget your own language as you go about mastering the language of the colony. Never forget who you are. You have to give equal investment to both, because I think we can get lost in the colonizer's world, and we can get lost in the status and the accolades that we get when we play along with that world, but to always remember your own culture and give it as much or more investment so that it can thrive, because we need that biocultural diversity in the world. We need all these languages to be protected to the extent that we can. And just do what you can. We can't do it all, but we can do what we can. And we have a little language class for Navajo or Diné. Every Friday night we spend an hour on it with our elder, and it's only an hour a week, but we do what we can. So anyways, I will let you go. I know it's very late over there where you're living. Again, www dot, can you say your full name properly just to make sure I'm saying it correctly?
Burhan Sonmez.
Burhan Sonmez. Okay, I was pretty close. Okay. So
Yes, very good.
www.burhansonmez, Sonmez. So burhansonmez.com. Check out his amazing work, his books. Um, he's pretty busy, so he might not be able to speak at your event. He's already traveling too much, but who knows, he's done amazing work to uplift the people and the cultures and the stories. And yeah, check out his amazing movement that he's a part of to uplift and support Kurdish people, the people of the mountains, people of the land, and all of the beautiful things that their cultures hold. And let's all of us, no matter who we are, no matter what country we are listening to, let us be vocal about the liberation of Kurdish people, for them to have their own country, for them to have their own autonomy, for them to have their own self-determination. And let us all work to protect them from the ongoing persecution that they are experiencing simply for existing on their own lands that have oil that people want. Because it's not fair to take people's land, liberty, language, and safety away simply because their ancient homeland sits on oil fields. And let us band together to protect these beautiful folks and their beautiful language. And join me in that. Is there any other sort of resources people can look at to keep track of the Kurdish cultural renaissance or movement aside from your own?
I think if people just go on Google and type Kurdish writing, they will find many, many sources there.
Yes.
That would be great.
Yeah. And if you're from Syria, if you're from Iran, if you're from Iraq, if you're from Turkey, consider ways in which your culture has actively suppressed and oppressed Kurdish people, and be a part of the solution. If you believe in decolonization for my people, then by translation and extension, you believe in decolonization for Kurdish people as well, because it's the same situation. And yeah, I just looked up Kurdish liberation on Google. There's a lot of really cool stuff. So thank you for your time, my dear brother Burhan, and have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much, Lyla. Wonderful. Have a nice time there.
Mother Earth Medicine is a podcast brought to you by Cultural Survival. Stream us on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Instagram and Facebook under Cultural Survival, and also on Instagram under Mother Earth Medicine Podcast.
We would like to thank the Cornell Ornithology Lab for allowing us to use recordings of the yellow-bellied sapsucker from their collection. This bird is known to the Choctaw people as Biskinik, the little Choctaw newsbird.
If you like our content, please share it with others. It's very important that the wisdom of Indigenous nations reaches as many communities as possible. And please consider joining us in solidarity by making a donation to Cultural Survival at cs.org/donate.